Hey guys, welcome back. So yeah, it's another video about tomatoes. So I wanted to do a separate video for you about what tomatoes I recommend for making tomato sauce or tomato gravy, depending on which school of thought you're from. You will hear me refer to this as gravy and sauce, but I come from a certain education on how to make this stuff, and it took me a while to learn which tomatoes were going to be my favorite, and I'm still trying new varieties, but here we're going to take a shot at what I found to be my absolute most favorite that I grew in 2023. Now, I always love Roma and San Marzano tomatoes. I learned how to make tomato gravy back in the 80s from an Italian family. And I think they called it gravy because they put a tremendous amount of meat in this sauce. And they use like the Tudoroso's can, where you get, I think there's around 9 San Marzano and Roma tomatoes in a can. And in that can, you didn't know out of those like 9 tomatoes really what they were. Were they San Marzano? Were they Roma tomatoes? Every now and then you would get one with a little bit of a basil leaf inside of it. But as I look back, I don't think they were really the best quality of tomatoes. You just don't even know. So, as I went on this pursuit of growing tomatoes, I thought, I'm going to grow my own gravy tomatoes and see how well I do and try to figure out what the difference is with all these different Roma tomatoes. So one of the first varieties that I bought from Baker Creek a few years ago was the Martino's Roma. And this is a determinate tomato that grows very small. They're smaller, like pear-shaped tomatoes, and they're meaty, and they did okay, but they were really susceptible to disease and pest pressure, and the armyworms really loved them. And while they put out a big high yield, they were super heavy, and you really have to cage them well and do a center stake. They don't like to be pruned, and they get so thick and bushy, they really do throw off a lot of tomatoes. And this was an okay tomato. Last year was the first time it didn't do really, really well for me. They got really, really blighty, but I think it was because I put them in a new location. Now this year I'm going to grow a few of these, but I found a few more tomato varieties that I actually like better that I'm going to move on to, which is the Roma tomato from M.I. Gardener. This was wonderful. This grew a much bigger, true like Roma tomato size, and they were thick and meaty, and they didn't have any seeds. Again, aggressive and very, very heavy, but these were much more disease resistant, and I was able to stake them up easier. They produced everything mostly all at once, but they did come back for a second round, and I highly recommend this M.I. Gardener Roma tomato. So if you're looking one to get, this is for sauce or gravy, whichever one you want to call it. Now, another San Marzano tomato that I ordered for the first time was from Baker Creek several years ago, the San Marzano Lungo 2. It's a long-shaped tomato. And it produced well, very aggressive, indeterminate tomato. And somewhere in this pack, I got some surprise variety that was growing something that was beautiful and fluted. We think it may have been an Abruzzi pear, but we don't really know. I don't think it was supposed to be in there, but gosh, if I can ever find this specific tomato, I always digress when I talk about this variety. When this one here actually produces on the vine the way it should, it's a beautiful tomato, perfect for sauces, very, very meaty, but indeterminate. So if you want something that's determinate, it's going to be in a bush, you want to get something like this. If you're willing to stake them, truss them, trellis them, keep them tied off, prune all the blight off of them, and be patient with them, this is a good variety if you can still get it. Now, I have not seen this on the Baker Creek site. It may be buried in there somewhere along the line, but if you can't find it, a similar tomato from M.I. Gardener is their San Marzano tomato. Grows the same way. This was a wonderful tomato. It produced really beautiful, delicious fruit. It was very, very thick and meaty. Now, I think one of my new a new favorite for me though, I'm still gonna grow this one, is the Jersey Devil. Wow, this produced the biggest San Marzano shaped tomato that I have ever seen. It was so meaty, and the thing that I loved the most about it was roasting it. It became a paste, like a true paste tomato, much better than the San Marzano and the Romas, because you know, you can make, they're great for sauce, but this actually made a paste. So when I roasted this and added it to my tomato gravy, it was absolutely incredible. So I've actually heard that there's another one called the Federal or something similar to that, that is very, very similar. And it produces a big, heavy, meaty, pasty tomato. I highly recommend Jersey Devil though. It had a little bit of blight towards the end of the season, but it held up really well. It did take a while to show up. I think that his my Gardener variety says it's 85 days. I think it was a little bit longer though. So I like to do a combination of many tomatoes when I make my sauce or gravy now. And I should probably stop calling it gravy because I don't put any meat in my tomato sauce anymore. I do roast my tomatoes though. Some people go through the blanching method to get the skin off and then they make their sauce to freeze it. Some people will freeze the whole entire tomato and make it later on where they're not under such pressure of harvest. I did notice though that I want to give you a tip if you're wondering on how to harvest and preserve these things if you're not actually canning and having shelf life tomato sauce. I found that when you freeze a whole tomato, which works just fine if you're going to use that for something like soup or some other type of sauce, when you freeze a whole tomato, in my experience, it takes on a whole lot more water. And when it finally defrosts, you're just left with a very, very watery tomato. So I roast them and then I freeze them. Even if I don't make it into a sauce or a gravy, I will just take the whole batch of roasted tomatoes and put them in a bowl and label them. I cover the bowl, I get a freezer safe bowl, I cover it with aluminum foil, and then I double bag it in freezer bags and I mark it whole roasted tomatoes. So I know that I didn't do any processing like adding sauteed garlic or fresh basil or anything like that. When I actually go through the whole full process and make sauce, I mark it as gravy or sauce. And I'll say that, you know, then I'll know if it has garlic and herbs in it, or if I did one where it's like all Parks Whopper sauce or all Roma, roasted Jersey Devils. I have tons of varieties because I do so much with my roasted tomatoes every year. You guys, there's nothing like growing your own sauce tomatoes or gravy tomatoes for soup or tomato sauce or pizza sauce. The Jersey Devil roasted for pizza sauce is absolutely incredible. Now, in my last video, I'll post the link below. You'll hear me talking about the Parks Whopper. That's another tomato that's versatile, and you can use that for your sauces and gravies if you're interested in having a multi-use tomato. Parks Whopper will work for that as well. Same thing with Amish paste. This is incredible for your tomato sauce because it's so meaty. It roasts up so well. And you can take a tomato that's big like this, slice it in half and put it on the grill even, and it sears the outside of it, traps in all of its juices, and it caramelizes. Absolutely incredible. So right now, these are really the only actual tomato sauce, tomato gravy, tomatoes that I am growing. In the past, I added Borghese tomatoes and Chadwick cherry tomatoes to my sauces, but they produce a lot of seeds. So I've stopped adding them in, and I'm actually not, I had mentioned in my last video, I'm not growing Grappoli di Inverno, Chadwick cherry, or Borghese tomatoes this year. Maybe next year I might do it, but I found that by adding the better and bigger Roma tomatoes from M.I. Gardener and the wonderful Jersey Devils, the Jersey Devil, this is the star of the show here. So there are just a few varieties that might help you if you're trying to consider what tomatoes to grow specifically for sauces, pastes, drying, roasting, that you don't really want to try to put these things into a salad, or you don't really want to try to slice them down. I mean, you could, but they're just not, going to give you what the big indeterminate tomatoes that I talk about all the time are going to give you. So it's something to consider. Now, any of these tomatoes that I just talked about with you now are wonderful for also making like a fresh marinara. You can chop them up and saute them in a pan with fresh basil and garlic and make an instant sauce. And they will, you know, not get too watery, and you can put them right onto some pasta. You can add them to rice. They do wonderful for a sofrito. You can do a lot of things with these, and you can add the stems as you cut them off into your pile of scrap if you save it like I do, where I make fresh vegetable stock. Adding fresh tomato clippings to the stock pot is wonderful. And you can take some of these guys, if you have put them aside, frozen raw, before you do any processing. These also work great when you take them out and defrost them, and you can add them to soup. So it works really, really great. So once again, if you have any questions, guys, please comment below. We get back to everybody in the comments. We love to interact with you. Again, my name is Leigh. This is our backyard garden. We are in suburban New Jersey, northwestern Burlington County. We are Zone 7. We're backyard suburban gardeners. We have a lot of varieties going on, and there's going to be a lot of things happening in 2024. So if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, please subscribe. If this helped you, give it a thumbs up, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, make comments, do all those fun things. We can't wait to get to know you. So thanks for spending your time with me, you guys, and I sure hope to see you in the next video.